So high fat versus high protein. This is something that's really kind of debated in the low carb in the carnivore community. Some people say you need to go more high protein. Some people say you need to go more high fat. And I guess the question is really which one is better. And I gotta say that I think it really depends on a few things. First of all, I think it depends individually, but also it depends not just individually, but where you are at this point in your journey. Um, I think the first thing is even if you're looking at being more of a high protein and not as high fat, you're still probably taking in more fat than what the standard American diet or whatever diet is out there. Most people just don't eat enough fat. So, you know, to me, I think the question really becomes more of, well, how do I know how much fat I should be eating? And again, I think it kind of, to an extent, depends. Um, so let me explain that a little bit. If you're pretty overweight and you have a lot of weight to lose, I think that doing high fat probably works pretty well for you. I think at a point though, you're early on in the diet. Most likely, you haven't been getting enough fat, and your body is going to crave that fat. You're going to need it. You use fat for so many different things, like brain health and just other things, other functions within your body, and so forth. And most likely, you're not getting enough fat right now. So when you first get started, it's probably okay to do a lot more of a high fat type of low carb diet, right? Again, whether it's carnivore, keto, low carb, ketovore, whatever, doesn't really matter. You're probably doing better if you're doing a higher fat diet at the start. I think a lot of people that have issues early on with either constipation or some of the keto flu, as they call it, things, is because that they're not getting enough fat in their diet. That said, it can definitely change. I've gotten to a point where I've lost 80 pounds on the diet in a year and a half. And at this point, I probably am doing a little less fat than what I was doing before. I've filled some of those voids in my body that I had before where I needed more fat. So I probably don't need quite as much fat now as what I was eating at the beginning. And um, if you kind of change that protein fat ratio a little bit to where you're taking a little bit less of fat intake, you're going to probably raise a little bit more protein just to keep you saturated, full and all that kind of stuff. And I think that that's where some people have a problem is they don't adjust things as they go. So they start out, they lose some weight, whatever, and then they get to a point where they hit a weight loss stall and they believe they should still be losing more weight, but they're not losing weight and they get frustrated. And a lot of times it's just because they need to lower that fat intake a little bit, maybe raise the protein intake a little bit more, and that's going to help with, the losing weight thing again and so forth. Keep in mind though that sometimes it looks like you're not losing weight, but your body is transforming and you're gaining muscle and that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind as well. And then I think that you get to a point where you've lost a pretty good amount of weight, pretty good amount of fat, and um, maybe you're in a situation where you are trying to or you want to build up a little bit more muscle. And in those situations, again, you're going to want to lower that fat intake just a little bit and increase the protein intake at that point. Again, though, this still comes back to, well, how do I know how much fat I should be doing? The first thing is if you're past that first few weeks where you might have keto flu symptoms and so forth, right? Um, if you're still having runny stools, loose stools, most likely you're eating too much fat. And then vice versa, on the other side of it, if you're having trouble going to the bathroom and being more constipated and so forth, then you might not be taking in quite enough fat. So there's got to be a good balance somewhere in between, so that you're not constipated, but you're also not having the loose stools. And that's somewhere in there is that sweet spot that you want to be. And again, as you go on and as you lose more weight and you get to a point that the weight is starting to stall a bit and not come off, that's when you probably want to lower that fat intake a little bit more and go a little bit higher on the protein. And that really does make a big difference. So, when you get to the question of what's better for you, higher protein diet, higher fat diet, I think it really depends on each individual person and where they really are at. There's people out there that are saying that they feel perfectly great on doing a really high fat diet. And, if they're not looking to lose weight and they've been doing this for quite a while, that's probably perfectly fine for them. If they still feel like they need to lose weight, then that's when maybe they should, dial back a little bit on that fat intake. So let me know in the comments what you think about this. Have you experienced differences throughout your journey where maybe you were higher fat at one point and then lowered that fat a little bit, or vice versa, whatever? Share with us in the comments what experiences you've had.